Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 27th regular City Council meeting. With that, City Clerk D. Stiles Elliott, will you please call roll?
Mayor Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember Valera.
Here.
Councilmember Fajarin.
Here.
Councilmember Gaither.
Here.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Weller. Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Councilmember Weller requested to be excused for this meeting. With that, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So it's excused. For community announcements, not as many as last week. We had a lot going on getting ready for school. So Labor Day closure, City Hall and the City of Pullman administrative offices will be closed on Monday, September 2nd for Labor Day. Offices will reopen on Tuesday, September 3rd. Neal Public Library will also be closed for the holiday on Monday, but is open that weekend on Saturday. The City of Pullman is holding 5 open houses to discuss potential changes in the Pullman City Zoning Code to gather input from the public on the types of middle housing they support in their neighborhoods. The public is welcome to attend any of these 5 open houses. The first of the 5 open houses will happen at Concordia Lutheran Church on College Hill Thursday, September 5th from 6 to 8 p.m. We have a number of downtown detours that have been going on, and just as a reminder, the Main Street and Payne Street and Paradise Street traffic will continue to be detoured to Spring Street and Daniel through Labor Day weekend. And I know there's been some messaging back and forth, and so that's how it is. For Parks and Recreation, the fall activity guide is out. Pick up your physical copy at Parks and Rec or at City Hall lobby, or view it on the city's website. Registration for city activities is open now, and I heard a great conversation this morning of a person that didn't realize just how many different adult activities and events that are going on, that it's not just for kids. Related to preschool, there's still openings available for the Pullman Parks and Recreation preschool on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons for 4th and 5th year olds. Call Pullman Park and Recreation to register. And then the library has a dementia workshop series. The Dementia and Memory Loss Care Specialists from Aging and Long-Term Care of Eastern Washington will leading a workshop on self-care strategies for care partners on Tuesday, September 3rd from 5:30 to 6:45. Our next item on the agenda is community comments related to non-agenda items. This agenda item is related to the first of 2 opportunities in the meeting for the public to bring comments to the attention of elected officials. This item is reserved for public comment, concerns, or other information not related to a previous public hearing or final action. And the agenda for this comments will not exceed 30 minutes in total. Each person will have 2 minutes, and I do believe we have 1 person from online for a comment. So if that person, I believe it's Juliet.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Juliet Parenti, and I'm a founding board member of the Inland Empire for Israel, an organization of Christians and Jews who support Israel and fight against terrorism and anti-Semitism here in the Inland Empire. We have members all over Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho. We sent all of you, including the mayor, a letter last week making you aware of our concerns about anti-Semitic statements made by Pullman Islamic Association Imam Raed al-Swire in his sermon on Friday, August 2nd. His comments in Arabic called for the annihilation of Zionists, a clear euphemism for Jews given the context of his comments, and claiming that Israel kills Muslims wherever they can, which is absurd on its face, as approximately 2 million Muslims live as citizens with equal rights in the state of Israel. And just yesterday, Israel rescued a Muslim Israeli being held captive by Hamas. We even sent you a link to his speech with English translation. We were disappointed not to get a response from any of you. We believe that one of the best ways to fight anti-Semitism is to expose it to the light of day and speak out against it. To that end, we ask that you publicly condemn this hateful speech and make clear that this type of hatred is unwelcome in your city. When you refuse to call out only hatred against Jews, you encourage it to fester and grow, as we have seen across the country. Ignoring our pleas will not make the hatred go away, and it will not make us go away. We ask that you make it clear to all of your citizens, students, and visitors that hatred against Jews will not be tolerated in your city, just as you don't tolerate hatred against any other group. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to provide public comment? Yes.
Is it for the special meeting?
No, this is yours for the special meeting? Yes. Okay, great. Okay, with that, if there's no other public comments, we then go on to city council member comments. And with that, I'll start with Councilmember Fajarin.
No comment.
Councilmember Parks.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the city and also Motley and Motley for the completion of 2 projects in the last two weeks. One was on all the way up Hall Drive from Stadium Way, and the other is the path out here in front of City Hall and the accompanying lit crosswalk. I'm very, I just saw someone walking their dog on my way here on that path. So they did it in a timely manner and with as little disruption as possible. And I appreciate everyone who was involved.
Councilmember Wright.
No comment.
Councilmember Guido.
Just an announcement concerning the homeowners, home ownership resource fair that it was going to be held in September. There's a date change. It's now Saturday, October 5th. And we will be putting out information about that fair in very short order, but I just wanted to make sure people got the date change and have it marked on their calendar for October 5th, which is a Saturday at 1 o'clock.
Councilmember DeLira.
No comment.
Councilmember Gaither.
No comment.
Thank you. And with that, next we're on to City Council future regular agenda requests. Are there any council members that have a future agenda request? Okay, seeing none. Now we're on to community comments on final action items. So this agenda is the second of 2 opportunities during the meeting for the public to bring comments to attention of elected officials on any agenda item that the City Council will take final action on. Are there any comments? If not, we're then on to presentation. The first one is a 2023 Excellence Award for Best City Project. And with that, I don't see Kara, so Sean, are you doing the introductions then? Or?
All right. Good evening. Mayor Benjamin, council members, thank you for allowing us to have some time on your agenda this evening. I'm Jay Dry from the DOT Local Programs Division. And also with me from the Local Programs Division is Mark Allen, who's the Region Local Programs Engineer for this area, along with Chad Roberts as part of his team as well. And also would like to introduce Charlene Kay, who's your new DOT Regional Administrator for this area as well. And also, we have the distinguished honor of having the Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration with us tonight as well. So Ralph Rizzo is here also. So a lot of folks probably are not familiar with local programs. We administer funding sources, provide training, technical support to agencies throughout the state, currently to over 400 agencies throughout the state. We have over 1,400 active projects in the state of Washington. Most of those projects involve federal fundings, and hence the close partnership with our friends at the Federal Highway Administration as well. So we appreciate that, as we do, as we know that the communities do as well. So each year, as part of that effort, we consider all the potential projects that would be eligible for consideration for recognition of excellence, projects that rose above all the rest. We realize that the projects take a team effort, everybody from the local city staff, who I think will be mentioned here later, to contractors, consultants, the team at DOT and FHWA to all work together to ultimately end up with a successful project for the communities. And so with that, we are here tonight to recognize as part of our 2023 Award of Excellence, the Best City Project in the state of Washington. So maintaining and preserving our transportation infrastructure, we all know, is extremely challenging. And with the safety figures going in the wrong direction, it's also that much more important that we're recognizing and taking care of the most vulnerable users of our transportation network. And this project went a long ways to helping out with the pedestrians, bicycle users, transit users, others in the area, not to mention the much needed preservation needs of the roadway itself. So with that, we'd like to recognize those projects and the City of Pullman for the 2023 Best City Project with the Award of Excellence for the Arterial Streets Resurfacing Project, which was labeled 2020. I know it wasn't built in 2020, but challenges for another set of reasons. But as the recipient of the award, we have a nice plaque that can be proudly displayed along with the poster. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ralph Rizzo to say a few words on behalf of FHWA, and then we'll turn it over to the region team to say a couple words as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Mayor, council members, thanks for having me here. My name is Ralph Rizzo. I am the Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration here in the Washington office in Olympia. So it's a pleasure to get out to Pullman. It's my first visit, so it's a beautiful place. I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to be here to honor you for such an excellent project. It's really very much in the spirit of what Congress and the administration has done with the bipartisan infrastructure law, providing safe mobility for everybody, all the users of the system. It was a very efficient project. Jay and I got a chance to drive it earlier today, and I mean, I hate the way this sounds, but about $1.5 million isn't that much in our business, and the way you were able to make it go that far and to do that many innovative things and to improve safety is just awesome. So, like I said, it was very efficient, innovative with the way you recycled the pavement, with the traffic calming features. You went out to the community that you were going through and talked to them and find out what was bothering them the most and what they needed, and you provided it. So it's safety for all users. I was impressed with some of the grades that you had to fit the ADA ramps in. It was very interesting and innovative. So congratulations again to the city, to Sean and Kara, and to our awesome partners at Washington State DOT, Jay's folks, and the folks in Region, Shar, Chad, and Mark. And is Mark here? Comes Mark for the region. But thank you very much. My pleasure.
A couple quick things. I just have a couple quick things. My name is Mark Allen. I'm a local programs engineer in Spokane. I'm kind of partial because I actually went to WSU back in 1992, so I love this area. I want to give a few thank yous. Chad Roberts, who's with me, is on my staff, helped lead this project through. Kara and Sam works with Sean's staff, did a great job. And I want to say, and Chad will probably reiterate this at any time, is the City of Pullman is a great place to work with them, with the staff that you have in engineering. Sean and their group do a great job. Some of these agencies we work with that are small towns and stuff, sometimes we have difficulty bringing them along, but they pretty much take the lead on everything, and they do a great job. So I want to commend them for their outstanding job, not on this project, but on every project we work with them. So that's all. Chad, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't have much to add, except this is not the exception. This is the norm.
Yeah.
When I work with the City of Pullman. So you have several federally funded projects going on right now. And it's really easy, and I appreciate working with the City of Pullman engineering staff and everybody I interface with. So I appreciate that.
I think from being Chad's supervisor, it makes his job too easy. I think that's probably one of the bad parts about this whole thing. Even more difficult, Sean. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you listening to us and getting the award. You guys did a great job. So let's do another one in the future, and we can win another one for the east side of the state. Right, Jay?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Do you want to get a picture, or?
Well, yeah. You want here or up there, or how do you, where do you?
What's the easiest? First one.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I get to hold it? Yeah. You should be proud.
You're the one.
Who's taking pictures?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do we need to bring anyone? Mike, you want to do a picture? So we each have ones here.
We're making this interactive, aren't we?
We're having fun.
Part of that too.
Okay.
Celebrate when
Hey,
things go
we're
right.
going to celebrate. In fact, if we can make it easy for you, then money should flow easier.
That's right.
There should be consequences.
Can you get everybody in?
Better say give Pullman more grant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You want to take that up there? I do appreciate the comments, especially about our staff and the quality of our staff. I think this is just another example of that quality that we have for the staff here, the work that they do, and how they're able to be good fiduciary responsibility and stretch the money as far as they can. There's a lot of projects that we're doing in place, and there's a lot of needs even going forward. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next up, we have Sandy Jamison, the Whitman County Auditor, to present information on the voting process, including ballot creation, distribution, return, ballot counting, and security. Very timely topic.
All right. Well, Mayor and City Council members, thank you for having us. I'd like to introduce, you've already know who I am, Sandy Jamison, the auditor, and this is Mish Stanley, who is my election supervisor. And without her, we would be in deep trouble. So I rely on her incredibly, and so I brought her today to clarify any questions that you might have, or if we end up getting in the weeds and I need to be pulled out of the weeds. So the way that how I decided to address this tonight was to go through some very common questions that I get from a variety of folks, including probably at least some of you on the council. So I'm going to ask the question and then I'm going to answer it. And then if we don't address what it is that you would like to hear from us tonight, we would be happy to continue on that. So first question, is our election system secure from cyber attack? Is our Whitman County tabulator in jeopardy of being hacked in by the Russians? And I'm just using Russians as a generality. You would be surprised at how often I get that question. And the answer to that is no, no. Our tabulator, which is the machine that scans and ultimately counts the ballots and tabulates them, it's a standalone machine. It's plugged into an electrical outlet. It is not hooked to the internet in any way. And so once the results are tabulated from this standalone machine, we print out a hard copy report. Then we transfer the results to a memory stick, and then we go to a separate dedicated PC and upload them to the state. So I also get asked, actually my husband asked me this, how do you know for sure that the state is reporting the same numbers that were off that tabulator? Well, I get a hard copy report off the tabulator, and then Mish and her crew upload to the state, and then we make sure that what they're uploading and what we see on the screen and what the state is reporting for our county matches my hard copy. And since I've been in office, we've matched every time, thank goodness. But because I do have a great a sense of concern that if those were not matching, we would immediately need to handle the issue, but it hasn't happened, so that's good. And I've never had a discrepancy on that issue. So how does the Whitman County election staff process a ballot and the associated signature envelope securely? You know, and you send your ballot in and you're signing the back of that envelope. How do we process those securely, if you will? So your signature on the declaration return envelope is checked against the signature that we have for you on file. And you were then credited for voting. So now you get credit in our statewide database that, yes, we received your ballot. So the declaration return envelope, which identifies you, is separated from the ballot as soon as we've verified your signature with an unopened ballot. So now I verified the signature, so now we separate and we store the signature envelopes in one area. The ballots outside of the envelopes are secured in a tamper-proof seal in a box, and then those, before they go to the tabulator, if we're not going to tabulate that day, those boxes are then put into our locked cage, which is also the tamper-proof seals are on that as well. So has Whitman County ever counted the ballot of a dead person? Not to my knowledge. We had one person die shortly after we received the ballot, but she had died after she did her ballot, so we counted it. We use various sources to remove folks from the voter rolls, obituaries, lists from funeral homes, the Bureau of Statistics issues reports, signed documentation from a family member. Okay. So has a person ever voted twice for the same election in Whitman County or Washington State? Probably the #1 question I get. Not to my knowledge in Whitman County, and I feel pretty comfortable that the statewide anomalies have been appropriately addressed. Since we began using a statewide database called VoteWA, we started in the fall of 2020. It is much easier to catch anyone who's trying to vote more than once. And people do, and often it's not that they're trying to commit fraud, they've made a mistake, or, you know, there are a variety of reasons. But the system will only allow one vote for one voter registration number. So every voter in the state has their own unique registration ID, and that's in that database. So each person has a single active record in the database. So when the ballot's received, we compare the signatures, as I mentioned before. If the voter attempts to return an additional ballot, the system warns, the elected official warns us, saying, hey, and it gets kicked out because we already have one in the system. And then my staff work through, why did that happen? A variety of reasons. Usually that goes before the canvass board. Okay. So how does Whitman County handle mismatched signatures? So that means we receive an envelope with a signature that doesn't match anything we have in the database for that voter. So every signature in Whitman County, in the Whitman County elections, is manually viewed by a staff member. We don't use signature verification machines like some of the larger counties do. My staff are trained in signature recognition. There's an actual formal training process that we go through. I've been through it, as does everyone on our canvassing board. So if it doesn't match, then we take it to supervisor. She looks at it. If she still says, I just don't think this is a match, then it gets put in a box. It's not open yet because we haven't verified that that is the correct signature. And that goes again before the canvass board, which is made up of the prosecuting attorney, the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, and me, the auditor. So then, and notice that's 3. So the majority rules on that. And so we meet at the end of every election cycle to go through those envelopes. The majority of our time is spent dealing with the mismatched signature issue. If two out of the 3, after studying it and looking at all of the sources we have, think that, yes, that is the person, then they will accept the ballot, and then it will go back to my staff, and they will then open it and count it. So prior to being presented to the canvass board because of a mismatched signature, my staff has made several attempts to contact that individual and ask them for another sample signature. That's through email, through phone calls, through letters, and we're required to do that by the state. And if they send back their signature that does match their ballot, then of course we count it and we call that ballot cured. C-U-R-E-D. So then we can go ahead and put it through our system, and it doesn't even make it to the canvass board. Okay, have I ever had any instances where I detected issues that needed to be handled by our sheriff? And since I've been here, twice. So one time we suspected that a daughter had signed on her mother's envelope after the mother had died. So we investigated and determined that the woman had indeed signed for her dying mother. I turned this over to the sheriff's office, and he had a visit with the daughter. He knew her. She was distraught, and he determined that no intentional fraud had been committed, and so no charges were brought. But the ballot was not counted, and the dead mother was removed from our rolls. The second time, it looked as though two sisters had signed the same name on their respective ballot return envelopes. After investigating, it was determined that they both lived in the same household for a time, and they had both been married to the same man. Thus, they both had the same last name and very similar first names. I mean, it was like made for a TV movie kind of a thing. So again, I brought it to the sheriff. I remember sitting in his office, and he was like, "What? Now, just a minute." We had to explain it again. And as we shared the story, he said, "I know them both. I do know them both." So he talked to one of them, and the other sister was now living in Oregon, and determined that there was no intentional fraud involved, and they often, quote, signed for each other. No charges were brought, and we did not count the ballot. Okay? Now, can a person register to vote in Washington State without valid ID? I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to have Mish kind of go over the process here, because this is a tricky kind of an answer.
So we're technically not allowed to ask for a driver's license if you come into our office. So that would be what some would think is a valid ID. But a lot of voter registration forms that we get have Social Security, the last four of your Social Security number. That is a valid ID, obviously. And there's other ways to register if you don't have those. I mean, you can bring a water bill or something like that with your name on it, and then we were able to take that as well. So that's kind of the clarification for that.
I think that the key here is that what we're saying is we don't vet the ID. We don't look at it and say, I think that's false. I mean, when you register, you sign an oath, and the oath says, I'm providing valid ID. And so I think that to register, they need their name, their birth date, their residential address, a mark attesting to their U.S. citizenship, and some kind of ID. But again, if they don't have it, we're still going to put them in the system, and their signature. Now, before they can actually get a ballot, that all has to be vetted by the state in their database. So we give them everything we have, everything that's been provided, and then it goes to the state to kick back to us and say, yes, they've passed all these, whatever ID they did give us is appropriate, sign them up. Then we can give them a ballot. Okay, so does the auditor verify that the person registering to vote is a U.S. citizen? Another big question. Short answer to that is no. Per state law, election officials may not verify citizenship when they receive a voter's registration. And there exists no official list of citizens to check citizenship status against. If the required information for the voter registration, and I listed all those, name, birth date, all of that, if that's been filled in and the oath has been signed, then we register them. modifying the state law to require an act, meaning requiring that we would vet that they're a U.S. citizen, would be an act of state legislation and federal law, an act of Congress. And the Secretary of State, who all of the election offices report to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State does not have lawmaking authority. They can certainly present legislation for the legislators to yay or nay, but the Secretary himself right now doesn't have lawmaking capacity. So those are some of our common questions, and we'd be happy to answer whatever else you have. I know Eric mentioned actual maybe physical security and what we have been doing or what we're going to be doing as we approach the November election. Knock on wood, Whitman County so far has not had to handle any real serious harassments. We have a couple people that are regulars, and we call them we have a crazy lady, and she comes virtually for every statewide election, makes her presence known, and then kind of moves on. I've never felt physically threatened by her, but so we have a few known folks that we expect to come out here come fall. But I have installed bulletproof glass in my observation area that the public can come in and observe what we're doing. We just had installed now a bulletproof door that is attached to our reception area, and then bulletproof as much as we could underneath the desk, so that and the window and the desk and the reception area have also been installed for bulletproof glass. And exterior, I don't know, I don't even know what the door is made of, metal, some kind of, anyway, high level stuff. And I have a plan to have some security on site, certainly at the hub here on campus. I'm going to work with the WSU security there. And it's as much for security of my staff as it is for other people coming up into the entryway. And then I may have a security person or two at our office in Colfax. I did do that 4 years ago for the 2020 election. I didn't want any armed security, so they weren't carrying a sidearm. But their presence in their uniform was really, I was just wanting to set that tone. But they were pleasant enough, and they ended up being great ambassadors in helping me maintain the line as people were standing outside trying to get in to register to vote on election night. So there's that. Other questions?
Other questions? Councilmember Parks?
Thank you. You said about when we register someone and there's no ID, and you send all the registrations to the state, and then they vet them.
Yes.
And then do they vet citizenship or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Guido?
Hi, Sandy.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. I wonder if you could tell the council and the folks listening, just the administrative piece of running an election and counting the ballots, how that works in terms of, I mean, I know the city pays for a certain fee or for basically you administering that election. How is that decided and how does that work?
Well, our actual fee structure is based on the number of issues and or people that are on that particular ballot for that particular election. And so those that have more elections going on as far as jurisdictional issues, then they're going to get charged a bigger pot of the pie. And for, you know, I always tell my smaller districts, especially if they're going to run any kind of levy and they're being financially and fiscally responsible, to try to run it during a large election so that everybody can share a piece of that pot. We do have a few that still want to run even if there's only one or two other jurisdictions. And, you know, they're going to get charged quite a bit. The minimum for me to run any election now is approximately $25,000. So that's my staff, that's my overhead, and all the supplies, the printer, the paper, you know, everything. And I think that sometimes people don't realize how much time and effort my staff are putting in prior to the election. So we're already preparing our local voters pamphlet for the general election, even while we were still dealing with the tail end of the primary election. So all those hours are now being put into, you know, that particular election. I think as far as administratively, we do have what we call election cycles, and then we're out of a cycle. And when we're out of the election cycle, we're then working up our database. We're making sure that we have proper addresses for folks, that everybody who's registered it has properly been contacted, and gearing our equipment up and having any repairs done that we made. All of that during non-election cycle, because as soon as those ballots go out, which is approximately 3 weeks before Election Day, we're in full-blown, well, we have people dropping their ballots off the same day they come out. I mean, we have great and exciting voters who want to just get in there. So it starts immediately. But during the actual process then of an election cycle, as soon as enough ballots come in that we can guarantee anonymity in an entire batch, we begin processing them. And that starts with signature verification, and then, you know, moves into opening the ballots, and ties in with the VoteWa database to make sure that we're only counting one vote per registered voter. I can go into more detail, but I just kind of wanted to give you a feel for that.
Councilmember DeLira.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. Extremely useful.
Okay.
I have two kind of related questions. Out of curiosity, how do write-ins get processed during the election? And then how do names put on the write-in line get tracked?
Okay, I'm going to hand that to Mitch.
So the way that the write-ins work is if there is a declared write-in, then we place that on, we have 2 boards in our office, so we place that on the boards, and then what we do is in the batches that we have, we will place the write-ins kind of on the top of the batch so we know, and then if we have any for that official write-in, we kind of make a mental note of it on our forms, but those don't actually come into play unless the official write-in has more than the top 2 vote getters. So then at that point is when we would go back and have to re-inspect those ballots. And then how they, so that's how we track them.
And what was your other question? How do write-ins, okay, yeah. We actually did have a write-in campaign where the person won the election. And so it was a good exercise for us to learn exactly how to do that. And so we did have to track those. She was a declared write-in, meaning that she had gone through the official registration as a candidate and all of that. And so we did track her as an official write-in. We get a lot of, you know, Mickey Mouses and Donald Ducks and some not so nice ones, but for write-ins. So.
Councilmember Fajarin.
Thank you, Sandy, and it's Mish. Mish, thank you so much for coming and presenting today. I was the initial council member who requested somebody from the elections office to come because, like many folks, I do share a worry of how folks are going to act after the election, how folks are going to respect election integrity, and then also, you touched base on it, the safety of the workers in the elections office and protecting that important work that they do. So thank you so much. I just have some very specific questions about kind of the tabulator in the machine. I don't know if you were able to answer that. How old is the machine? Does every county have the same tabulator? I'm just kind of unsure of how that equipment side works.
There are, how many vendors? Maybe four vendors in the state that supply our tabulators. And so, no, not every tabulator is identical to perhaps another county. But what the state does do is come and perform a logic and accuracy test on the tabulator before every primary and general election, meaning we have a state person come and verify. For the smaller jurisdictional elections that we have in February and April, we still do a logic and accuracy test, but the state doesn't send a rep. So our prosecuting attorney usually comes over and I come over and we sit. So we're testing the accuracy of that machine. We have passed every time for the 6 years that I've been there. But that particular test is a matrix that we run through that Mich has set up, and it's been vetted by the state. And then we run it through the machine, and then we also have a hand count of that same matrix, and we make sure that those are identical and that the machine counted what we hand counted. And we have a state person verifying that. And those have gone smoothly. How old is our machine?
It's been there since I've been.
The machine has been there since I took office, since Mich took office. I have records where Eunice Coker, my predecessor, purchased it. I will tell you that I am in the process now. I've ordered another machine, so it will be brand new. And my intent is to get it in place before the general election. If God forbid something happened to this one, we still need to keep going. And it will also go through the LNA test. And I've ordered it from the same vendor so that all the software will still be compatible. Good concern, though, and it's been our concern. So we have a COOP plan, we call it. It's a emergency plan. So if the power goes out or, something worse happens, we do have a contingent site where we would handle an election with a different tabulator that would be certified. Okay.
Councilmember Gaither.
Yes, thank you. To echo everyone else's sentiments, thank you for the presentation. My two questions are really basic, and it's for the public, just so we dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's. Mm-hmm. For those listening, how can they confirm their voter registration status, and what is the deadline to register for this upcoming election?
So they can go on to votewad.gov, and right on that site, it will ask you to identify yourself, and you can look at your entire history. So you log in with your name and your birthday, and then you can look at your voting history. During an election cycle, that will also show you if we have, quote, accepted your ballot. We do have people that put their ballot in a drop box on a Monday and call us on Tuesday and say, it's not in there. You don't have it's not in there. You've got to give us some time to empty the boxes, go through the entire SIG match before the system will show that, yes, we have it. Now, if it's been a week or 10 days and you're not in there, we understand the concern, and then often when we get those calls, we can look you up on our system and say, yeah, we have it. The actual deadline, oh boy, do you have that memorized? Okay.
So now the laws have changed, so you can actually register on election day up until 8 o'clock, right before 8 o'clock or 8 o'clock if you are in line. To do it online or by mail, it is 8 days before the election day, but right now you can register clear up until election day.
Yes, I was trying to think of what date that is, but up until the 8 days before the election, you can do just what I talked about on votewad.gov. After that, you can still register with us, but you need to come into our office in Colfax to do so during business hours. And then at the student hub, which will be at the Cub on election day and the day prior to that, we will have our staff there, so you could register there as well. Can't you? Registering there, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
All
Very
right.
informative presentation, very timely. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
And I realized that I skipped over an earlier agenda item. So at that time, Sean, if you could come up and provide us an update on the Grand Avenue water break.
Good evening, everyone. A pipe broke, things got wet, we fixed it. No, I'll try to make it a little more longer than that. So about 7:45 p.m. Wednesday night, water main break was reported, 905 South Grand in front of the funeral home. And for the WashDOT folks that aren't here, that's State Route 27. It was in the southbound lane. If you've driven by it, you've probably seen the excavation there. Water was coming to the surface that night and ultimately made its way to the gutters. It was captured entirely in the storm system downstream. We didn't flood anybody out, so that was a positive event. Road was shut down with the help from police and fire, thank you, from Center Street down to Crestview. And we had the whole section there. We weren't sure exactly how many businesses at the beginning, how many were going to shut down, how many residences, things like that. When we got down to excavating it, we found that it was a 6-inch cast iron pipe. That pipe was installed in 1957. It had a 6-foot long longitudinal crack down the length of the pipe. The crews cut out about an 8-foot chunk of that pipe and replaced it with PVC pipe and the fittings to adapt that as well. 10 businesses were out of water, and for a brief moment we had 2 residences and the Living Faith Fellowship Church. And then when we realized we found another valve, we could shut that one off, turn this one back on, so the 2 residences and the church were out for maybe 30 minutes at most. Water main was flushed, the water was restored to the area at about 1:15 a.m. And then we got traffic back up and running about 1:45 a.m. and my head hit the pillow about 2 a.m. So it was a late night for our crews as well. So as it stands right now, we have traffic detoured out of that southbound lane into the center turn lane. The sidewalk is closed on the west side of the street until that gets restored. The plan to restore it will be about 60 feet of curb gutter and sidewalk, and we're going to work with our sidewalk contractor that's just started their construction project and add that to the scope of this project. So we'll get a curb gutter and sidewalk installed first, but that's not going to happen until probably mid-September, given their scheduling that they've already got with us. We will then do a small works roster contract for the pavement restoration, which is about 16.5 feet by 30 feet. Our city crews, the equipment we have doesn't really lend itself to doing a patch that big. We can do small pothole and patch repairs, but the one that we had to excavate for this water main restoration is a little larger than what we can do internally. So with that, when we shut the valves off to try to fix that water main leak, one of the valves south of there near Crestview down the hill here started leaking when we opened everything back up, and we noticed it the next day. Crews came out on Thursday and said, yep, it looks like it's leaking. We'll get down and figure that one out on Friday. So Friday we started into that. The crews excavated that area, found that the gasket that kind of holds the valve casing together had blown out, and the bolts were too rusted out to actually repair it. So we had to replace the entire 10-inch diameter valve in its entirety. We set out with maintenance, a water operations crew, and this one we had a little bit more time to think about it. So we sat down and planned for that that morning, and the crews started the excavation process, went and made sure we had the parts, and got it down there, because a 10-inch valve isn't something that we just have on the shelf. We have like one on the shelf, and do we have all of it? But we planned for a longer term shutdown because we weren't certain exactly what we were getting into. There were some unknowns that we had still. But it worked out. We shut the water off about 1:05 in the afternoon, and it was back up about 2:15. So just over an hour of total shutdown, valve replacement, and turn back on at that. Same 10 businesses were shut down, and we got them back up very quickly. We were able to coordinate with them during the day to let them know, hey, we're going to shut your water off here in a couple hours. They were very thankful. They started filling buckets up, getting ready for that. We did delay a little bit because of the Thai restaurant, getting them through their lunch hour rush, and then we shut the water down to make that happen. We filled the temporary patch over the weekend, and then just today the crews finished what they could, because that was a smaller patch. So we did the patch work internally, got a hold of Motley and got some asphalt out there. And the patch was fixed as of 3 o'clock or 3:55 this afternoon. So as that first leak on Wednesday night, we lost about 691,900 gallons of water. Seems like a lot. If we were charging for that in a residential setting, that would be just about $1,000 of lost revenue for the water system there. And with that, I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions? If not, I appreciate all the work that the staff does, and at whatever time it's required to. I had opportunity to be down there not as late as you were, so, and it's good to see everybody in action and how professional everybody is. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to adjourn the City Council meeting in order to go into the Transportation Benefit District meeting. And with that, Dee, would you please call roll?
Mayor Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember DeLira.
Here.
Councilmember Fajarin.
Here.
Councilmember Gaither.
Here.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Weller. Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Councilmember Wright requested to be excused for this. If I can have a motion.
Only if it's Nathan.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Weller.
So moved to excuse. You're a
Yes,
hologram.
and we appreciate you being here. I had first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
With that, into the public hearing.
All right.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight is a public hearing to take feedback from the community on legislative authority to enact a 0.1% sales and use tax increase for benefit of the Transportation Benefit District. Just a quick note on sales and use tax. Everybody's very familiar with sales tax, but also in the same category as use tax. So goods used in the state of Washington are subject to either a sales tax or a use tax, but not both. So use tax is a tax on the use of goods, certain services when sales tax has not been paid. Really the best example of that are goods that are purchased outside the state and being used inside. So both items are covered in here, so I just wanted to touch on that real quick. For the public hearing, the item is for the discussion on the 0.1% piece. The Transportation Benefit District can levy up to 0.3%. The first tenth can be legislative by this group. The other 2/10 is required a vote of the residents, the voters of that district, and that's not the intent of tonight's, is just to discuss this 1/10. Okay. Just a couple quick notes on the Transportation Benefit District. Coming out of the 2021-2022 budget process and the following goal setting, it was a goal of the City Council to bring forward a Transportation Benefit District to create another set of revenues to enhance our transportation infrastructure. Specifically, this was coming in right after the pavement analysis presentation that the City Council received in July of 2021. In April of 2023, the City Council adopted the Transportation Benefit District, but without a revenue source. So the district existed, but there wasn't revenue to do additional projects. There was additional discussions in June of 23 and November of 23 to consider revenue sources, and we went through a couple different options there, and this was the item specifically that was asked to return as well as what it would take to do the 2/10, and that presentation won't be tonight. We will consider bringing that next month if the board decides they want to continue and take action on this item. The 1/10 of 1%, if you go back and look at the presentations that we've done on this started before this 1/10 legislative action was allowed. In July of 2022, the state legislature took action to allow this extra 1/10 of a percent. So if you go back and look at some of the old video on this, it's like, well, where was this before? This was new, and it wasn't brought back to the group until 2023. And with that, just another quick note on revenue, this 1/10 of 1%. Looking at the last 12 rolling months of sales tax collections, if we would have been collecting this, would have generated approximately $520,000 to the Transportation Benefit District for transportation-related projects. And a really good way to look at that transportation-related projects is on June 11th, the City Council approved the capital improvement plan. And then the following agenda item was the Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP. And that just took all the transportation projects in the CIP and made another document with it. Those items would certainly qualify as transportation-related projects. So with that, this slide I like to put up in the discussions because it's a lot of what generated why the Transportation Benefit District, why the City Council wanted to do the Transportation Benefit District. This came from the pavement analysis report, and it tells the story of where things were trending, but please remember that even though the presentation was in 2021, the data was gathered in 2019, so that was 5 years ago. There's a budget for 2025 in the preliminary budget to rerun this report and see how the numbers have changed. But just to kind of go back over this a little bit, we're looking at what is our pavement quality index, where they've reviewed the pavement, they've taken camera, video, and created, based on their criteria, where our pavement is. So this is what generated what roads should really be repaired first, which roads, if we get on top of with some preventative maintenance, we can string along longer. And what really, if you look about midway down to the item with the 3 dots on that, that's at the time we were currently doing street projects at that level. And at that time, the pavement quality was continuing to deteriorate. We weren't keeping up. And what the consultant had asked us to do is put more into preventative maintenance. And if we did some more of that, you could see on the line right below it, the pavement quality went from negative to positive. So to be able to do more preventative maintenance and other projects, additional funding will be needed. We're not keeping up with the funding sources that we have. So that's why the Transportation Benefit District, and that's why this is in front of you tonight for consideration. Because you can see that going from the $933,000 a year to the $1,533,000, that $500,000 did increase the how we would be able to keep up on the pavement quality index. Those numbers, like I said, are 2019. If we were to put this to work right away, the roads have, gone another 5 years, and we'd like to see exactly what those numbers are. But again, progress can be made. Also, a note, since 2021, when this was presented, the inflation has gone up 15.2% to today, and we've actually seen higher numbers in our project costs over the last year when we look at Project Downtown, Crestview, what's going on in Terraview right now. So trying to get this money to go further is the key. But With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have now, as well as return after the public hearing is complete and talk about next steps and answer more questions.
Any initial questions? Councilmember Wright?
I just have a comment, and I did a quick, like, 36,000-foot flyover, and Whitman County, all of the communities within Whitman County are at a 0.79 sales tax, 0.79 sales tax, one of the lowest in the state, except for, I think, Skamania County, Ponderay County, and a number of different unincorporated areas. We're just as low as you can get, and some places as high as 10 to 11%. And so I think just looking at that and your comment on the rate of inflation, and we haven't seen a big increase, that, at least in my view, it certainly is worth looking at and examining further. Thank you.
Any others? If not, then we'll go to the public hearing. So I'll open up the public hearing if anyone at this time has a public comment. With that, Jamie.
So I prepared comments for 3 minutes. Is it at your discretion to please allow 3 minutes? And if not, can I leave what I had prepared?
As council, is it okay for you to do 3 minutes for this one? So yes.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jamie Brush, and I've lived in Pullman for about 24 years. I'm the founder and executive director of the nonprofit Synergy Bicycle Alliance, and I've been actively engaged in advocating for improved active transportation infrastructure for over a decade now. In April 2014, at a Washington State Transportation Commission meeting held here in Pullman, the concept of a transportation benefit district was introduced. I testified at that meeting where public comments overwhelmingly highlighted the need for better pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. Washington State Transportation Commission member Ann Haley specifically asked then Mayor Johnson why Pullman had not yet established a TBD. Recognizing the potential of this funding mechanism, I quickly arranged a meeting with then City Supervisor Mark Workman, urging him to present the TBD option to the council as a means to fund bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Mr. Workman agreed and brought this proposal to the June 10th, 2014 City Council meeting. At that meeting, our current mayor, who was then a council member, remarked that he believed everyone who uses our roads, including those from outside the city, should contribute. Mr. Workman noted that a sales tax increase would be the only viable way to achieve this. Unfortunately, no action was taken by the council at that time. For several years following that meeting, I continued to lobby for the adoption of a complete streets policy, which was finally enacted by the council in 2020. This policy clearly states that the principles of this policy shall inform all transportation funding decisions and further mandates the identification of funding sources to develop a comprehensive and integrated multimodal transportation system for all users. It goes on to emphasize the need for safe, efficient, convenient, reliable, and equitable access for all transportation modes, including pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, and motorists. My concern tonight is that the crucial history and intent behind the TBD, particularly its origin, focus on improving pedestrian and bicycle safety, have been neglected in the current discussions. The TBD was not just about roads, but about creating a safer, more accessible city for everyone, regardless of how they travel. Any TBD established in Pullman must prioritize the safety of those traveling outside of cars, trucks, and buses. To ensure the focus is upheld, I propose the creation of a multimodal advisory board. This board would provide a collaborative platform for residents, experts, and stakeholders to work with the council, ensuring that our TBD aligns with the intent and goals of our complete streets policy and that we truly build a transportation system for all. Without such a properly populated board, the risk is that decisions will be made in isolation, informed internally by the city, rather than by the diverse voices of our community. This is not only problematic, but inconsistent with the vision we established through our Complete Streets policy. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. At this time, this is opportunity for, Mike, do you have other comments before we go into discussion, or?
No, I'm just happy
Okay.
to answer any questions if there's anything that came from the agenda item.
Yeah.
We are not here tonight to ask the board to make a decision. We just wanted to give the community a chance to, or the board a chance to hear the community's comments.
Right. Yeah, and at this is where, now from the board, looking for direction that we can provide to the staff related to whether we'd like to see an ordinance brought forward or additional discussion or no action at this time. So at this, any thoughts on that? Councilmember DeLira?
Yeah, I think we definitely need the tax increase to help invest in our roads and build sidewalks where we need them, and also to support our public transportation system. And I would like to see support for the projects on the TIP to be funded. So I'm very much in favor of the 0.1% increase, and maybe an ordinance around that.
Councilmember Fajarin?
Thank you so much, and thank you, Mike, for the information about the sales tax increase. You did mention that you'd be willing to come at a later time to help facilitate a discussion about the other 2 tenths that would require a vote from the constituents of Pullman. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is something that the previous board did want to hear on. Part of why you're not seeing that tonight, and there's a couple pieces of business to do tonight, and there's also a deadline, because part of the agenda item was that if the Transportation Benefit District took action on this and we reported it to the Department of Revenue by October 17th, since that's 75 days in advance of the cutoff, collection on this 1/10 of 1% can start January 1st. The next date for cutoff would be January 16th for collection on April 1st. And at that point, too, we'd also be talking about the timing of a ballot measure. I know that the auditor was going to be here today, so I didn't want to commingle the 2 items. So I would take that's a much lengthier and different step.
Councilmember Parks?
I agree, excuse me, with Councilmember DeLira. I really support this sales tax increase primarily because it is equitable. It spreads it all across all users of our roads, and not only our residents or people who are here more than a few months or a few weeks of the year. And I would be interested in the multimodal collaborative board or advisory council, depending on, I mean, I would be open to something like that as well.
Other comments? Yes, Councilmember Gaither?
Yeah, I agree with both Councilmember DeLira and Councilmember Parks. I support the 0.1% tax increase, and I am open to investigating the multimodal advisory board, or just that concept, and just seeing what comes from it.
So it sounds like there is, at least going forward with an item related to an ordinance, is what I'm hearing.
Great. I will return back on the 24th of September with a agenda item for more discussion and possible action.
Okay, any discussion? With that, the next item on the agenda is a resolution of the City of Pullman for the
Excuse me, Mayor.
transportation. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt.
You need to.
I think you need to close that meeting and then reopen the council.
Actually, there's one more agenda item.
Oh,
There is
sorry.
one more agenda item. So resolution for and Mike, I'll just turned it to you.
Thank you. So thanks again. Before you tonight for your consideration is Resolution TBD-01-24, approving a material change policy for the Transportation Benefit District. So transportation benefit districts are required to adopt a material change policy by RCW, and this would affect projects undertaken and funded specifically by the Transportation Benefit District. So RCW does state that the district governing body shall develop a material change policy to address major plan changes that affect project delivery or the ability to finance the plan. So the policy must at least address material changed costs, scope, and schedule, and the level of change that will require governing body involvement and how the governing body will address these changes. And the bright line factor across the state is that that change would be 20%. So city staff has researched other jurisdictions for sample language, and transportation benefit districts from around the state have adopted a resolution very similar to what you see in front of you tonight for your consideration. As such, we've presented this in the same manner. So the Transportation Benefit District previously met in June of 23 and November of 23. There were no changes recommended at that time, so staff is recommending that the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution TBD 0124 as presented, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for adoption.
Move to adopt resolution TBD 01-24.
Second.
With that, if you'd read the resolution, please.
Sorry again for that interruption. I was getting ahead of myself. It is resolution number TBD-01-24, a resolution of the City of Pullman, Washington Transportation Benefit District approving a material change policy.
With that, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Motion passes. With that, we'll adjourn the Transportation Benefit District meeting and reopen the City Council meeting. Next item is the consent agenda. These items are listed on the consent agenda, are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by single motion of the City Council without separate discussion. If I could entertain a motion to read the consent agenda by title only.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
With that, if you could read, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is a motion to dispense with the reading of the August 13, 2024 regular meeting minutes and approve them as submitted. Item 2, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks number 2011-2208 through 2011-2253, totaling $1,756,006.04. Item 3, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 2011-2254 through 2011-2390, totaling $1,784,529.18. Item 4, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks, electronic transfers, and ADP payroll transfers totaling $1,706,627.31. And finally, item 5 is a motion to approve the 2024 WSU football agreement for fire department EMS services for 6 home football games.
Do any council members desire to have any items removed from the consent agenda to be discussed separately? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
With that, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Now we're on to the regular agenda. First is a motion to authorize the acceptance of a firefighter's grant award. With that, Assistant Chief Andrew Shavaz.
Thank you, City Council and Mayor. In the spring of this year, the fire department applied for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant to host 2 training classes. On August 16th, FEMA awarded us the grant, which will fund specialized technical and confined space rescue certification classes. It'll train up to 16 Pullman Fire Department personnel per class. This includes the cost of instructors, classes, equipment, and the cost of overtime for the members to attend the training. Excuse me. The fire department is recommending a motion to accept the Assistance to Firefighters Grant for the amount of $84,554, with the city of Pullman contribution of $8,455. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I can continue talking.
Any questions? Councilmember Fajarin?
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Andrew, and to Fire for securing this grant. I did read that you're going to have personnel from a different agency on site to train. Did you have an agency in mind to provide this training?
Not currently. There's a couple of agencies up in Spokane or in Coeur d'Alene that we've used in the past for this type of training, but we'll get quotes from a couple of different businesses.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
With that, if you could read the motion.
Motion to authorize the acceptance of the fiscal year 2023 Assistance to Firefighters Grant Award.
That, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to discussion items. We have two tonight. One is our discussion on the last work group. This is the strategic influences and partnership. This one that as council goals, what you set was to develop and implement a strategic influence and partnership plan which emphasizes the importance of influence and collaboration with local, regional, state, and national entities. When I was working on placing people on work groups, we already had everybody at least on 2 work groups, and so I was concerned about overtaxing or equitable, and also this agenda item focuses not just on council, but also on staff. And so what I've initially done and what I'm proposing is that assigning myself and Mike Urban to this work group, where this work group then, because this really involves all of council, that we would present to council at least once every 2 months and bring the items forward to as a council work together on. And to talk about things that we're currently in process working on. One was increased joint meeting opportunities. This was something that council expressed interest on, and we're right now working on adding joint meetings with Pullman School District and also Graduate Professional Student Association. Also was to increase regional connections with electeds. This is something that I've been working on to bring back the regional quarterly breakfast meetings. We started them first in May with the airport one, and you should have received an email this week related to the September 12th one that the city of Moscow is then going to, that they'll be the sponsor hosting on related to water, and then the one after that is probably going to be around regional transportation too. So those are those regional connections that are opportunities to connect with the regional elected leaders. And also along that same line, myself and Mayor Moscow will be traveling in September back to DC as a part of our work on the airport board, so it's not city funds, but we'll be actually back there lobbying on 3 different areas. One is airport, the second one is water, related to our regional water, and the third is related to MSA designation, which if we can get that between Moscow and Pullman, it can open up some regional transportation funding opportunities. In addition, what we're looking at is wanting to increase elected and staff presence on key state and regional committees. So with that, we'll be actually requesting from you your VITAs and also your interest areas, and you'll get a separate email related to this, where we'll then go in and review the AWC committees opportunities, the regional, the state, and governor-appointed committee opportunities in order to bring them forward at a future meeting in order to talk through, are there any that we'd like to specifically target, that if we think key for targeting for our electeds or for our staff related to that. The 5th one is going to be the next agenda item, which is the legislative agenda. That's going to be direct once the legislative agenda is set, then this committee would then look at what are the strategic partnerships that we need to develop to advance it. And then the last one is around the city council goals. Are there collaborations which we need to develop in order to advance any of those regional goals? So that's the strategy that as Mike and I have been talking through this, but we wanted to bring it to council to see if this is something council agrees with, just as the strategies we move forward related to this strategic influence and partnership. So with that, I entertain any thoughts or discussion? Are we missing anything? This is our initial start. I mean, we'll develop it further as we go.
I think it sounds very good. I mean, I appreciate your two doing this, and I'd like to see some of the things happen. It's on. It's on.
It's on.
So, anyway.
We're all helping each other out today. I appreciate it.
Just point of or
Yes.
question. So you said you're going to be reporting back and giving us opportunities to weigh in, as well as provide updates every 2 months or so?
Right, so at least every 2 months, because we feel this is something that it's strategic for the whole council to be able to weigh in on this, as opposed to only having a couple people on this one.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, then we'll move forward with that. And that rounds up our last of our work group one. So then I'll move on to our next discussion item, which is legislative priorities. And within it, you see for this agenda item that we've kind of the schedule that we'd like to work, that for staff and I'd like to work through with you, related to the legislative priority review of presenting it, having a review draft on the 10th, and then going to a final draft on the 24th for approval, within dissemination in time for then our October 29th meeting, that is the legislative meeting that we've scheduled with the 9th District legislators, and then also to be able to start moving forward in preparations for the legislative priorities. So with that, you have the 2024 legislative priorities before you, and interested in what priorities on here that you'd like to see moving forward in 2025. Are there any priorities in relationship to the goals that we've set this year that we should make sure we include in the priorities? And then within this, one of the things that as we've been talking with individuals that are developing these priorities, it's helpful to have us this is a long list that we have with these 9 bulleted items that are from last year. But if we were able to have a couple that are, these are the ones that we want to specifically work with our legislators on, around if there's legislation that we want to try to advance or move forward, or specific action. There's some of these that we want to support, and if there's an opportunity, jump into it, but there's others that we'd like to be able to be more proactive in movement. So with that, I'm interested in discussion. So, Councilmember Fajarin.
Sorry, I guess I'll start us off. This is my first crafting of the legislative priorities one. But I think a couple that stand out are ones that align with the city council goals and priorities that we adopted a couple months ago. Obviously, the railroad tracks and Pullman city limits, I would definitely like to see that carried over to 2025, given that that's a major goal. Bypass, folks in the council members in the bypass committee can speak on that. And then personally, I would love for tuition for higher education to carry over. I feel like college costs are continuing to increase, and the state has a lot of opportunity to increase tuition support, specifically Washington College Grant, which is the main financial aid program from Washington State. So if my fellow council members would like to see that too, I would like to have Washington College grant actually specifically named in the tuition for higher education, since that is the major financial aid program for low-income students.
Okay. Other discussion? Councilmember Delira?
Yeah, I would also like to echo what Councilmember Fajarin also pushed forth. I would also like to continue seeing Highway 26 passing lanes move forward for the 2025 legislative priorities. I think it's important for safety reasons, since our students go back and forth from the west side to the east side, but also it helps ensure that other larger vehicles where there's more human and material loss, like trucks and intercity buses, are also taken care of. So hoping to see this item move forward for the safety implications. I also would like to see housing and affordability move forward as well. But I think I would like to see more of a push for rent stabilization, which I am not sure how the rest of the council feels about that. I think that's one of the things that we should help support for renters who are extremely burdened by high rents. And I have some other thoughts, but I'll yield until other members of council pitch in.
Other? Councilmember Wright?
So I think with the exception of the goal that we have for the regional airport continued support, I say all of the other priorities continue to be relevant. I mean, I don't see that any really have come to any reasonable conclusion, as I say, other than the airport. I mean, every one of these are things that we're working on right now. Just my thought.
Okay. Councilmember Guido?
I echo Council Member Wright's thoughts. I have the same thought that these are all still very relevant. And what I would like to see is our representatives tell us where they are on these priorities. Instead of us just voicing the same concerns, I would expect that as our representatives, they are also telling us the progress in that area and giving us more of a report versus us talking.
And that's something when we get to further in council meetings, we'll get to one where we actually ask preparation for the legislative agenda. And so that's something we'll definitely include in. Other?
I agree with everything that's been said.
Councilmember Gaither?
I agree with everything that's been said as well, particularly what Councilmember Wright said. I take it this isn't an opportunity to necessarily lay out our Christmas list, but I would like to just throw it out there that as we review our legislative priorities for 2025, I would like for us to consider the critical need, or at least think about the critical need to address the shortages or the shortage of child care facilities in Pullman and across the state. Adequate child care is a livability issue and is a cornerstone of economic development, because without sufficient child care options, many parents are unable to fully participate in the workforce, which hampers retention and recruitment and people wanting to be here. So I think that economic development is important, livability is important, and I think having sufficient child care in our city and in our state meets both of those line items. So I just would like for us to consider including that as a component in our 2025 legislative agenda as we're talking to legislators.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I just want to echo that. It was a great addition, and yes, it needs to be added because it's become clearly a livability issue and clearly a recruitment and retention issue here in Pullman.
Now, similar to childcare, I know one of the things that, we've noticed recently, a number of businesses that have announced closures related to being a border community and competing against Idaho. Is there anything in here that you would like address that with business support and as it relates to, the border community side? Because that's the piece where the legislature can act if we wanted to bring something like that forward.
I just a question for you, Mayor. Do you have anything specific in mind for someone who's might be unfamiliar with what kind of policies would benefit our community that's on those kind of border towns?
If a number of the policies, if you think about the difference between Idaho versus Washington, as it relates to some of the taxing, some of the different policies, whether it is insurance, whether it's malpractice, and there's a number of differences, and whether, so there could be within this if and I know that the Pullman Chamber is actually actively looking at, what are things in which they could do as a part of their legislative agenda related to this piece too. But it's just something that we do have within our goals, specific goals that we set this year related to supportive businesses and that economic development piece. Is there a component of that we'd like to look at within the legislative agenda? Councilmember Parks?
That brings to mind, I don't know where it would fit, excuse me, but when you're talking about the differences between the two states, one large problem is the reciprocity of license recognition among healthcare workers. So it's difficult if Washington doesn't recognize Idaho or vice versa, then we cannot, it really limits the pool from which we can choose. So I have heard about that being a problem, but it doesn't go under downtown. So
Well,
maybe
it's under the mental health, so we currently.
Oh, it is,
we
excuse
currently
me, you're right.
Have that.
Okay, sorry.
So, this is a discussion that we're then going to bring back a review that you can then pick apart. And so what I can do is work on one related to the business and economic side. Councilmember DeLira?
Yeah, I want to kind of finish off the other items I would like to see in the legislative priorities, kind of tacking on to support for tuition for higher education. If we could help support the continuation and expansion of the Basic Needs Task Force that was established by the Post-Secondary Basic Needs Act, and that tackles students' basic needs like affordable housing, sufficient food, quality childcare, mental health care, and other needs. And I think this is relevant because part of this is providing funding to universities for basic needs navigators that bridge not only campus resources, but also community resources. So maybe some wording in the tuition section around supporting student basic needs would be great.
Yeah, and so if you can send me some stuff on it so I can look at it. Now, and understand with this tuition one, this is something that we're supporting WSU in, if this is the direction that they're interested in. As a city, we're not taking the lead on this particular topic, but it's showing that we support our partners that are in the community. Yes, Councilmember Guido.
I do have one that I'd like to add. There is a kind of grassroots effort going on right now to create a drug and alcohol recovery center in Pullman to help those who are actively in recovery from addiction and are looking for peer support, which has been proven to help with reducing any kind of relapses and helping people get skills, training, etc. And I know with the opioid monies that have been coming into cities, there is available funding for that, and help from our legislators would be much appreciated in trying to get this off the ground.
Would it make sense, we have mental health right now, would it make sense to broaden that to more of a health? And include that as part of it, as opposed to another bullet item? Okay. Okay, any others? Councilmember DeLira?
All right, one last one.
Yeah, and understand, you know, when this comes back, we're actually going to be cutting things out because we have to narrow, because we're going to have to narrow this down and be very specific. And because if it's too broad, then the legislators aren't even going to read this thing. So that's, so but we're taking all this input now, and then we'll see how we can fit it in.
Okay, so I'm still learning much about this, part of the RTPO, but I know generally the RTPOs need more funding to carry out their operations, as well as to help support any projects that we want to see move forward. So I think this is beneficial for things like the bypass, intercity bus system, stuff like that. But I know that they've been hit with not keeping up with the rate of inflation. So if we could play a part in advocating for RTPOs to get more funding, I think that would be beneficial for us, but also region-wide transportation.
Yeah, and that's something that's probably, I wouldn't put in the legislative priorities as our priority, but it'd be something that, as they're bringing something forward, we could support with them if that's as the council wants to do. Councilmember.
I just have a comment, and that is, as we are looking at these and kind of reframing them, that we do that in the context of this is what we're doing in regard to all of these things, and are looking for your help to support those steps that we've already taken.
Right.
I think that buys us a lot of collateral in terms of, you know, we've got some skin in the game, and it's important for them to recognize that.
Like the formation of the work groups, for
Right.
example.
Okay, great. With that, that is our last agenda item. We don't have any new business before us or an exec session, so with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I thought we did have an executive session. We did and we don't.
It's been moved.
Okay, works for me.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.
8:37.
Thank you.